Imagine booking a dream cruise, only to hear passengers demanding the captain turn off the ocean waves like they're some backyard pool toy, or insisting on refunds because the sea sounds too loud at night. Yes, you heard that right, folks. These are real complaints from Americans who've turned paradise into pure pandemonium. Stick around as we dive into 61 hilariously unhinged gripes that'll have you questioning humanity. And if you're cracking up already, hit that like button to spread the chaos, subscribe for your weekly dose of absurdity, and drop a comment below with your wildest vacation fail. Let's make this comment section a complaint fest. 1. A frustrated middle-aged woman stormed up to the guest services desk on her Bermuda cruise, ranting that the ship had docked only on one side, completely blocking her plan to jump straight into the water from the other side for a quick swim. She waved her arms wildly, insisting it ruined her entire vacation because she couldn't access the ocean directly without walking around the pier like a common tourist. The crew member tried to explain basic docking procedures, but she cut him off, demanding compensation for the inconvenience and threatening to write a scathing review online. Her husband nearby rolled his eyes, muttering that she never even brought a swimsuit, while fellow passengers snickered at the absurdity, turning the lobby into a chaotic comedy show as she refused to back down. 2. An elderly man grumbled loudly in the specialty restaurant, pushing away his bowl of ice cream with exaggerated disgust, claiming it was frozen solid and too cold to eat without risking frostbite on his tongue. He called over the waiter, who politely suggested letting it melt a bit, but the man exploded, accusing the kitchen of sabotage to make desserts inedible on purpose. His wife at the table tried to calm him, saying it was just premium gelato, but he insisted on a full refund and a heated spoon next time. Other diners overheard and burst into laughter, one even joking about needing a blowtorch, escalating the scene into hilarious chaos as the waiter fetched the manager to handle the meltdown. 3. A young mother wheeled her stroller up to the room steward with a desperate look, insisting he babysit her fussy infant and handle diaper changes while she and her husband explored the port for a few hours of freedom. The steward calmly explained that childcare wasn't in his job description, but she blew up, claiming it was part of the all-inclusive service and threatening to report him for negligence. Her husband stood awkwardly beside her, whispering apologies to the steward as she dialed guest services on her phone. Fellow cruisers passing by stifled laughs, one muttering about entitled parents, while the baby wailed louder, amplifying the ridiculous scene into total onboard chaos. 4. An absent-minded man dragged his suitcase to the guest services counter, fuming that he'd checked his luggage at the wrong ship's terminal, and now they wouldn't let him board that other vessel instead of his booked one. He argued loudly that it was a simple mix-up, and the crew should just transfer him over like it's no big deal. The desk agent tried to reason that ships aren't interchangeable taxis, but he demanded a free upgrade or compensation for the hassle. His travel companion shook her head in disbelief, admitting he'd read the wrong boarding pass, as nearby passengers eavesdropped and giggled at his oblivious entitlement, turning the line into a comedy of errors. 5. A well-dressed woman in her 50s marched to the purser's office complaining that if she'd known the ship's exact itinerary down to the minute in advance, she never would have booked this cruise at all because it clashed with her personal schedule. She waved the brochure accusingly, saying the vague ports of call misled her into thinking it was customizable. The officer pointed out that itineraries are always subject to change, but she insisted on a full refund for the unpredictability. Her sister traveling with her tried to defuse the situation by joking about crystal balls, but the woman doubled down, drawing stares and snickers from other guests in line who couldn't believe the audacity. 6. A scruffy young man slouched at the security desk, accusing his cabin attendant of stealing his marijuana pipe and demanding it back immediately or hefty compensation to replace it. He claimed it vanished during room cleaning, ignoring the ship's strict no-drugs policy. The security officer explained that prohibited items are confiscated, but he ranted about personal rights and threatened legal action. His roommate hovered nearby, looking mortified and denying any knowledge, as the confrontation escalated with the man pulling out his phone to record it. Onlookers whispered and laughed, one suggesting he try the gift shop for souvenirs instead, making the whole deck buzz with unbelievable hilarity. 7. An older gentleman settled in his cabin flipped through channels furiously, then stormed to guest services complaining there was no cable TV on the ship, completely ruining his plans to catch his favorite evening shows while at sea. He argued that modern cruises should include full satellite access like hotels do. The agent informed him about the onboard entertainment options, but he dismissed them as inferior and demanded a discount for the boredom. His wife patted his arm, reminding him they were on vacation to relax, not watch reruns. But he persisted, drawing chuckles from the queue as someone quipped about streaming the ocean view instead, heightening the absurd drama. 8. A light sleeping woman in her 30s called the bridge at midnight, whispering angrily that the ocean sounds were way too loud, crashing against the hull and preventing her from getting any proper rest in her cabin. She suggested the captain steer into calmer waters or install soundproofing immediately. The officer on duty stifled a laugh while explaining that the sea isn't controllable, but she hung up dissatisfied and later complained at breakfast. Her travel partner teased her relentlessly about earplugs, and when the story spread among table mates, they erupted in laughter, proposing she request a room upgrade to the engine room for white noise, fueling the morning's comedic uproar. 9. A middle-aged couple cornered their Jamaican waiter during dinner service, lecturing him at length about why black people supposedly vote for Democrats just to get free stuff, completely ignoring his polite attempts to change the subject. The waiter smiled through it, excusing himself gracefully, but the couple continued ranting to each other about politics ruining their meal. Nearby diners overheard the awkward exchange and shot disapproving glances, one whispering to the manager about the insensitivity. The waiter later shared the story with colleagues who rolled their eyes in disbelief, turning the staff lounge into a hub of head-shaking humor over the couple's oblivious cultural blunder. 10. A patriotic old man grumbled throughout the atrium, complaining that there were too many foreigners on this supposedly American cruise, spreading like a virus and ruining the authentic experience with their accents and customs. He demanded the cruise line enforce stricter nationality quotas for future sailings. The activities director tried to highlight the diversity as a positive, but he waved it off as unpatriotic nonsense. His granddaughter traveling with him blushed in embarrassment, apologizing to affected passengers nearby who overheard and exchanged amused eye rolls. The incident sparked lighthearted mockery among the crowd, with one guest joking about building a wall around the buffet, or escalating the foolishness into viral-worthy ridicule. 11. A bored teenager lounged by the pool deck railing during another endless sea day, whining to his parents that there were way too many boring days with absolutely nothing to do. And why couldn't the ship just stop at some halfway point in the ocean to let everyone get off for a break? His dad chuckled, explaining that the middle of the Atlantic isn't exactly a tourist spot, but the teens stomped off to guest services, demanding they add impromptu islands or something exciting. The agent suppressed a grin while suggesting onboard activities, yet he insisted on a refund for the monotony. His mom rolled her eyes, teasing him about his phone addiction, as fellow sunbathers overheard and burst into giggles, turning the deck into a symphony of sarcastic suggestions like building a pop-up mall on a raft. 12. An irritated old woman splashed her way to the lifeguard station at the main pool, insisting that someone immediately turn off the wave machine because the constant splashing was making it impossible to swim properly without getting water in her face. The lifeguard politely informed her that it was actually the ship's natural motion creating the waves, not a machine, but she huffed, accusing the crew of pranking passengers for fun. Her friend beside her in the water laughed, saying it added adventure, but the woman waved her off and called for the manager. Poolside loungers cracked up at the exchange, one yelling about complaining to Poseidon next, escalating the sunny afternoon into waves of uncontrollable laughter among the crowd. 13. A thrifty middle-aged man leaned over the bar counter, arguing passionately that all drinks, souvenirs, and even casino games should be completely free since he'd already shelled out big bucks for the cruise fare and expected everything included. The bartender smiled while mixing a cocktail, pointing out the all-inclusive options he could have purchased, but the man slammed his fist lightly, claiming it was false advertising. His wife tugged at his arm, reminding him of the fine print he'd ignored, yet he demanded free chips for the slots right then. Nearby patrons chuckled, one offering to buy him a drink out of pity, transforming the bar into a lively debate club filled with humorous jabs about bottomless buffets, extending to the blackjack tables. 14. A punctual businessman in a polo shirt queued at the purser's desk, demanding full compensation for the entire hour of cruise time, supposedly lost due to the overnight time change that messed with his internal clock. He tapped his watch impatiently, explaining how it threw off his schedule and robbed him of precious vacation minutes. The desk clerk tried to clarify that time zones are unavoidable at sea, but he insisted it was the cruise line's fault for not warning him adequately. His business partner waiting nearby snickered, joking about billing the Earth for rotating, as the line behind them erupted in lighthearted mockery, with someone proposing they turn back time like in a movie to satisfy him. 15. A disappointed young woman peered out her cabin window while docked, then rushed to guest services complaining that her expensive ocean view room only showed the bustling port and not the actual endless ocean she paid a premium for. She gestured wildly, saying it felt like staring at a parking lot instead of serene waves. The agent explained that views change with docking, but she crossed her arms, demanding a cabin swap or a refund immediately. Her boyfriend trailed behind, admitting the view was fine at sea, but she shushed him and escalated her rant. Overhearing guests in line stifled laughs, one quipping about requesting a view of Atlantis next, turning the counter into a hotspot for eye-rolling hilarity. 16. An exasperated elderly gentleman jabbed at the elevator buttons repeatedly, then headed to maintenance to complain that the deck numbers were faded and nearly impossible to read, causing him endless confusion and wrong floor mishaps throughout the ship. He demonstrated with his glasses off, squinting dramatically to prove his point. The crew member apologized and promised quick fixes, but he grumbled about safety hazards and demanded braille options on the spot. His companion aunt nodded sympathetically at first, then giggled when he admitted getting lost en route to bingo. Elevator riders joining the scene chuckled softly, suggesting glow-in-the-dark paint or personal escorts, amplifying the minor issue into a comically overblown elevator etiquette discussion. 17. A health-conscious jogger in running gear halted mid-stride on the track, coughing dramatically before confronting the cruise director about smoke from the nearby designated smoking area, wafting over and making it utterly impossible to run without inhaling fumes. She waved her hands to fan away invisible clouds, accusing the layout of being poorly designed on purpose. The director offered alternative workout times, but she rejected them, insisting on relocating the smokers or banning it altogether. Her running buddy paused beside her, wheezing exaggeratedly for effect, as track walkers overheard and joined in with sarcastic coughs. The group devolved into laughter, proposing bubble suits for joggers, turning the fitness area into an impromptu comedy routine. 18. A sunbathing mom in her swimsuit flagged down a deck attendant, complaining that the ocean waves were far too rough that day for comfortable swimming, and someone needed to calm them down somehow before she could dip in without getting tumbled. The attendant bit his lip to avoid laughing, gently reminding her that weather controls aren't part of the amenities, but she pointed at the horizon accusingly, suggesting the captain detour to smoother seas. Her kids splashing nearby cheered her on playfully, while the attendant radioed for backup. Fellow swimmers eavesdropped and howled with mirth, one yelling about calling Neptune for assistance, transforming the poolside into a splashy spectacle of absurd demands. 19. A conspiracy-minded old man gripped the railing during a rocky patch, and then marched to the bridge tour demanding to know why the cruise line was purposely steering straight into waves to make the ship rock more than absolutely necessary, probably for some thrill-seeking agenda. The guide explained navigation for safety, but he shook his head, muttering about hidden motives and requesting a smoother route map. His son accompanying him face-palmed, apologizing to the group as the man pulled out a notebook of evidence. Tour participants stifled snorts, one whispering about alien wave generators, escalating the educational session into a whirlwind of tinfoil hat theories and belly laughs. 20. An indignant businesswoman reviewed her bill at checkout, slamming it down and complaining that she was unfairly charged for international phone calls from her cabin, even though the rates were clearly posted everywhere. She just didn't notice them. She argued it was deceptive placement and demanded the fees waived immediately. The accountant reviewed the policy patiently, but she interrupted with tales of urgent work calls. Her colleague waiting in line shrugged, admitting she'd warned her about roaming, yet the woman persisted with dramatic sighs. Other disembarking passengers chuckled at the oversight, suggesting invisible ink for signs next time. turning the final moments into a billing blame game full of ironic twists. 21. A stylish aunt in elegant attire sauntered into the main dining room in her pajamas, and only to be gently turned away by the host who explained the dress code requiring proper clothing for meals. She exploded in outrage, declaring it a ridiculous policy that stifled her comfort and demanded to eat right there as is. The host apologized while suggesting the buffet alternative, but she crossed her arms and called for the manager, insisting on a policy change. Her niece dining nearby hid her face in embarrassment, whispering that everyone else managed to dress up, as waitstaff exchanged amused glances. The scene drew whispers from other tables, with one guest joking about starting a pajama party revolution, turning dinner into a fashion faux pas fiasco. 22. A shopping-obsessed woman disembarked in Tahiti full of excitement, only to find every store shuttered due to a local holiday, so leaving her fuming that the entire day was wasted without any retail therapy. She stormed back to the ship and confronted the excursion desk, accusing the cruise line of poor planning and demanding compensation for the boredom. The agent explained holidays are unpredictable, but she waved off the excuse, suggesting they should have rescheduled the port call. Her husband trailed behind, chuckling that beaches were still open, yet she ranted on about missed deals. Fellow excursion-goers overheard and laughed, one proposing a ship-wide holiday for refunds, escalating the dockside disappointment into hilarious holiday havoc. 23. An impatient dad with binoculars around his neck paced the observation deck in Glacier Bay, while complaining loudly that they had to wait a full 2 hours just to glimpse the glacier, and someone needed to speed it up next time like a drive-through. He gestured at the slow-approaching ice, insisting the captain accelerate or find a closer spot. The naturalist guide smiled while describing the scenic buildup, but he interrupted with stopwatch in hand, demanding efficiency. His son beside him grinned, teasing about fast-forwarding nature as the crowd murmured in amusement. One passenger quipped about installing glacier conveyor belts, transforming the majestic view into a comedic critique of Mother Nature's timing. 24. A burly middle-aged man approached the iFly skydiving simulator sign-up desk, red-faced after being told the weight restriction barred him from participating, calling it embarrassing and downright discriminatory against bigger folks. He pounded the counter lightly, demanding they waive the rule or modify the equipment on the spot. The instructor explained safety protocols calmly, suggesting other activities, but he rejected them as lame substitutes and threatened a lawsuit. His buddy waiting in line patted his back, joking about starting a diet mid-cruise, while staff stifled smiles. Onlookers whispered laughs, one suggesting sumo skydiving leagues, turning the adventure zone into a weighty debate full of body-positive banter. 25. A organized young woman clutched her tender ticket tightly while queuing for the boat to shore, then erupted at the tender coordinator because she still had to wait in line despite the ticket, insisting it should guarantee zero waiting like VIP access. She waved the slip accusingly, claiming false promises ruined her plans. The coordinator pointed out high demand, but she demanded priority boarding next time or a refund. Her travel companions sighed, admitting everyone had tickets, yet she persisted with crossed arms. Waiting passengers chuckled softly, one proposing tender lotteries for fun, elevating the orderly process into a ticketing tantrum of entitled expectations. 26. A frazzled mom watched in disbelief as another group fresh from their luau excursion cut right into the tender line ahead of everyone, prompting her to confront the staff about the unfairness and demand they be sent to the back immediately. She pointed fingers, explaining how her family waited patiently while these latecomers jumped the queue. The attendant apologized for the mix-up, but she insisted on stricter enforcement or free drinks as apology. Her kids tugged at her shirt, whining about the delay, as the offending group shuffled awkwardly. Line mates nodded in agreement, then laughed, one mocking luau line privileges, turning the boarding bottleneck into a queue-jumping quarrel, ripe with righteous rage. 27. An elderly woman in a wheelchair rolled up to guest services with fire in her eyes, complaining that there was no special priority treatment for her mobility needs and demanding immediate service everywhere on the ship without any waits. She recounted lines at the buffet and elevators as insulting, insisting on personal escorts. The agent offered assistance programs, but she dismissed them as insufficient and threatened bad publicity. Her daughter, pushing the chair, nodded supportively at first. Aunt then whispered about patience, while staff hurried to accommodate. Nearby guests exchanged sympathetic yet amused looks, one joking about wheelchair warp drives, transforming accessibility concerns into an over-the-top entitlement escapade. 28. A cautious old man burst out of his cabin in a towel, marching to maintenance to complain that the hot water was scalding and dangerously hot, demanding they adjust it to a safer temperature right that instant before someone got burned. He demonstrated with dramatic winces, accusing negligence in plumbing. The technician promised a quick check, but he stood firm, insisting on testing it himself post-fix. His wife peeked from the door, giggling that he always exaggerated showers, yet he lectured on about safety standards. Hallway passers-by paused to listen, odd one suggesting ice cube faucets next, turning the steamy situation into a piping hot plumbing parody. 29. A suspicious businessman scrutinized his onboard account statement at the purser's desk, convinced that the $225 credit listed was actually a sneaky extra charge in disguise and demanding an explanation or removal immediately. He tapped the paper repeatedly, theorizing billing tricks to confuse passengers. The clerk clarified it was a genuine credit from a promotion, but he shook his head, requesting a full audit. His associate beside him chuckled, pointing out the positive sign, yet he delved into conspiracy rants. Queue observers stifled laughter, one whispering about reverse psychology charges, elevating the accounting anomaly into a mistrustful money mystery full of fiscal folly. 30. A bargain-hunting aunt unfurled her new rug in her cabin after returning from Turkey, only to discover the tag said made in China, prompting her to storm to the shore excursion office demanding a full refund for the deceptive souvenir. She accused the recommended vendor of fraud and the cruise line of complicity. The coordinator offered to investigate, but she rolled up the rug dramatically, insisting on cash back now. Her travel niece helped carry it, snickering about global manufacturing, while the aunt raved on. Office visitors overheard and grinned, one joking about authentic fakes, turning the cultural keepsake into a transnational treasure trove of trickery. 31. A weather-weary middle-aged man gathered his family at the activities desk. After learning a port was skipped due to flooding, Ace insisting the crew simply cut one of the boring sea days short to squeeze in the missed stop somehow. He mapped it out on a napkin, arguing it was basic rerouting. The desk agent explained safety came first, but he countered that passengers deserved makeup time. His wife sighed, reminding him of the contract terms, yet he rallied nearby families for support. The group chuckled nervously, one dad joking about swimming to the port, turning the missed adventure into a stormy scheduling showdown filled with futile fixes. 32. An excited, tech-savvy young man bounced to the shore excursion counter in frustration, explaining he'd pre-ordered a shiny new iPad for easy pickup in Cozumel. But the sudden weather-forced itinerary change left him empty-handed and demanding compensation. He flashed his confirmation email, accusing the cruise line of ruining his gadget getaway. The coordinator sympathized while noting weather clauses, but he insisted on overnight shipping or a free onboard equivalent. His girlfriend rolled her eyes, teasing about his impulse buy, as the line behind them snickered. One passenger suggested carrier pigeons for delivery, escalating the tech tantrum into a whirlwind of wireless woes. 33. A queasy mom clutched her stomach at guest services, pleading for a full refund on her drink package because she spent several days too seasick to sip a single cocktail, let alone enjoy the unlimited pours. She described her cabin confinement vividly, blaming the rocky voyage. The agent offered sympathy credits, but she shook her head, insisting unused days equaled wasted money. Her husband nodded weakly from the side, admitting he'd overindulged enough for both, yet she pressed on about fairness. Waiting guests stifled giggles, one whispering about motion sickness martinis, transforming her green-faced gripe into a boozy backlash of barfing bargains. 34. An overheated old woman fanned herself dramatically in the buffet line right after boarding, complaining that no ice was available anywhere on the ship within the first chaotic hour of embarkation, leaving her parched and furious. She demanded chilled drinks immediately, accusing poor preparation. The server apologized for the rush hour shortage, promising restock soon, but she tapped her foot, recounting her dehydration drama. Her companion uncle chuckled, suggesting room temperature enthusiasm, while staff hustled cubes her way. Onlookers in the crowd laughed lightly, one proposing iceberg towing, turning the icy impasse into a meltdown of maiden voyage mishaps. 35. A detail-oriented woman leaned over her veranda railing, then hurried inside to call housekeeping about her cabin's obstructed view blocking the scenery, even though she'd knowingly booked the cheaper obstructed category to save money. She argued the partial lifeboat glimpse was unacceptable and demanded a clear view upgrade free of charge. The attendant clarified the booking details, but she insisted on false advertising. Her sister sharing the room giggled, pointing out the discount, yet she dialed up the chain of command. Balcony neighbors overheard through thin walls and chortled, one yelling about ocean blindfolds, amplifying the viewless vista into a panoramic parody. 36. A routine-loving businessman tucked into bed early each night, only to complain at the purser's office that the evening turn-down service arrived late, or was skipped entirely on some evenings, disrupting his precise sleep schedule. He listed timestamps accusingly, demanding consistent chocolate placements. The officer promised staff reminders, but he requested compensation for the unrest. His roommate colleague smirked, admitting he'd hung the Do Not Disturb sign accidentally, yet the man blamed crew inefficiency. Late-night wanderers in the hall snickered at the door, one suggesting pillow fight penalties, elevating the bedtime blunder into a nocturnal nuisance narrative. 37. A scatterbrained aunt scrolled through her app confirmations post-booking, realizing she'd accidentally scheduled 2 paid activities at the exact same time slot, and immediately blamed the ship's system for allowing the overlap without warnings. She confronted the activities director, insisting on refunds for both or rescheduling magic. The director explained user error, but she waved her phone, claiming glitchy interfaces. Her travel companion nephew facepalmed, confessing he'd seen her double-click, yet she ranted about foolproof tech. Group members nearby laughed, one proposing cloning services, turning the scheduling snafu into a double-booked debacle of digital drama. 38. A wobbly-legged teen gripped the handrails during a choppy afternoon, then texted his parents from the lounge before heading to guest services to ask what the captain was planning to do to fix the overly rough seas that day, or as if it were an adjustable ride. The agent bit back a smile while describing weather patterns, but he suggested anchors or detours earnestly. His mom arrived, teasing about his landlubber legs, while the dad chuckled from afar. Loungers eavesdropped and howled, one proposing seasickness spells, transforming the turbulent trip into a captain-commanding comedy of oceanic orders. 39. An allergic old woman sneezed her way into her premium suite upon arrival, horrified to find it covered in mysterious fur hair that triggered her sneezing fits, plus suspiciously stained sheets that screamed unclean. She summoned housekeeping in a huff, demanding a deep clean or suite swap immediately. The manager inspected apologetically, suspecting previous pet smuggling guests, but she accused luxury lapses. Her husband wheezed alongside, joking about furry surprises, yet she insisted on hypoallergenic guarantees. Corridor cleaners paused to listen, one whispering about shedding sea monsters, turning the plush paradise into a hairy horror story of sweet scandals. 40. An eco-conscious young man watched from the deck as a diesel forklift loaded food supplies at port, then lectured the environmental officer about how that single machine was causing global warming, all while hypocritically ignoring the massive emissions from the cruise ship itself. He pointed dramatically, demanding electric alternatives. The officer nodded while explaining logistics, but he ranted on about carbon footprints. His activist friend clapped supportively at first, then grinned at the irony of their voyage. Deck observers chuckled, one quipping about rowing the ship home, so escalating the green gripe into a forklift-fueled farce of environmental enlightenment. 41. A budget-conscious young woman dipped her toe into the main pool on her short discount cruise, only to recoil in horror as the water shifted to a murky urine-like yellow right before her eyes, prompting her to flag down the pool attendant and demand an immediate drain and refill. She splashed dramatically to prove her point, accusing cheap maintenance of turning the oasis into a biohazard. The attendant explained chlorine reactions calmly, but she rallied nearby swimmers for a boycott. Her boyfriend lounged nearby, chuckling that it matched her bargain expectations, while the group erupted in disgusted laughter. One sunbather quipped about adding lemon for lemonade, transforming the splash zone into a colorful complaint carnival. Nah, 42. An innocent-looking old man shuffled through the boarding security line, freezing when drug-sniffing dogs circled him suspiciously, making him feel like a hardened criminal despite his clean record and prompting a heated rant to the officers about invasive tactics ruining his vacation vibe. He patted his pockets theatrically, insisting he only packed vitamins. The handler assured it was routine, but he demanded the dogs be retired or he'd sue for emotional distress. His wife tugged his sleeve, whispering about his forgotten pipe tobacco, yet he blustered on indignantly. Queuing passengers snickered softly, one joking about smuggling candy, turning the checkpoint into a canine conspiracy comedy. 43. A early rising dad circled the pool deck at dawn on his family cruise, fuming that sneaky passengers had already reserved every deck chair with towels and books by 5 a.m., leaving 0 spots for latecomers like him and demanding staff enforce a no-reserve policy with chair patrols. He pointed at the empty occupied loungers accusingly, suggesting timed evictions. The deck steward offered alternatives, but he insisted on justice or free cabanas. His teen son yawned beside him, admitting he'd seen the rush while the dad plotted stakeouts. Early birds nearby grinned smugly, one whispering about alarm clock arms races, escalating the seating skirmish into a sunrise seating saga. 44. An impatient middle-aged woman threw her hands up in the elevator after another endless wait, complaining to anyone listening that absolutely everything on the ship, from buffets to shows, involved ridiculously long lines and pointless delays, turning her dream vacation into a queuing nightmare and demanding streamlined operations like fast passes everywhere. She recounted her day of holdups vividly, blaming overcapacity. A fellow rider sympathized at first, then chuckled about cruise life rhythms, but she pressed for refunds per minute wasted. Her husband nodded wearily, suggesting patience pills as the doors finally opened. The crowd dispersed laughing, one proposing line dancing classes, amplifying the wait woes into a linear lament. 45. A hygiene-obsessed aunt twisted the cabin tap for a quick wash, watching in shock as the water instantly stained her white towels a rusty brown, while the entire ship reeked of sewage, leading her to burst out the door and confront housekeeping about the filthy plumbing and odor assault demanding bottled water deliveries and air purifier stat. She waved the discolored cloth like evidence, accusing neglect. The steward promised flushes, but she insisted on a deep investigation. Her travel companion cousin coughed dramatically, joking about treasure in the pipes, yet she dialed management. Hallway guests pinched noses and giggled, one suggesting perfume fountains, turning the stink into a brownish bathroom brouhaha. 46. An overwhelmed old woman wandered the endless buffet halls, plate in hand, complaining loudly to the chef that there was simply way too much food available absolutely everywhere on the ship, making choices paralyzing and portions wasteful, and demanding simplified menus or portion guides to curb the excess. She gestured at the overflowing stations despairingly, blaming gluttony promotion. The chef offered samples, but she rejected them, insisting on variety cuts. Her granddaughter at the table laughed, piling her own plate high, while the woman lectured about moderation. Diners nearby chuckled, one proposing food blindfolds, transforming the feast into a gastronomic gripe of abundance anxiety. 47. A cleanliness freak mom stepped off the gangway into Nassau's cruise port, wrinkling her nose at the scattered litter and grimy streets, declaring the entire area absolutely gross and unclean before marching back to the shore excursion desk to complain about recommending such a dump and demanding sanitized alternatives or port skips. She described the mess vividly, accusing false advertising. The coordinator suggested guided tours, but she crossed her arms, threatening bad reviews. Her kids skipped ahead obliviously, while she ranted on about standards. Returning passengers nodded, then laughed, one quipping about bubble wrap ports, elevating the dirty dock into a sanitary scandal spectacle. 48. A skeptical businessman eyed the Cape Liberty terminal from his taxi window, comparing it to an abandoned dump with garbage piles everywhere before even boarding. Near then confronted the check-in staff about the eyesore entrance ruining his cruise anticipation and demanding terminal cleanups or embarkation refunds. He snapped photos as proof, blaming mismanagement. The agent apologized for construction, but he insisted on luxury greetings. His colleague chuckled, pointing out the ship's shine, yet he persisted with urban decay tales. Waiting travelers grinned, one suggesting trash-to-treasure hunts, turning the grubby gateway into a terminal tirade of trashy theatrics. 49. An adventurous young man ventured beyond the main area in the Dominican Republic port, only to find it dirty with no restrooms available and armed guards patrolling, prompting him to hustle back to the ship and complain at guest services about the unsafe, unclean setup demanding better port vetting or onboard warnings. He recounted his quick retreat dramatically, accusing negligence. The officer noted security measures, but he demanded escorts next time. His girlfriend listened wide-eyed, teasing about his bravery while he exaggerated dangers. Dockside returnees laughed, one proposing porta-potty parades, transforming the gritty grounds into a guarded gripe gala. 50. A comfort-seeking old woman inspected her inside cabin upon arrival. Dissatisfied with the two twin beds pushed together instead of a proper queen, and immediately called housekeeping to demand a full queen-sized bed be brought in right away, ignoring space constraints. She tugged at the seam uncomfortably, claiming back pain risks. The attendant explained configurations, but she insisted on miracles or upgrades. Her husband sprawled across, joking about royal decrees, and yet she phoned higher-ups persistently. Cabin neighbors overheard through walls and snickered, one whispering about bed teleportation, turning the sleeping setup into a mattress monarchy mishap. 51. A confused old man rattled the handles in his tiny cabin, convinced he couldn't escape because one door led straight to the bathroom and the other had his own "Do Not Disturb" sign blocking the way out like some cruel puzzle. He phoned guest services in a panic, describing his entrapment and demanding rescue, or a bigger room with clearer exits. The operator stifled laughter while explaining the sign was removable, but he insisted it was a design flaw trapping seniors. His wife inside chuckled, admitting he'd hung it himself for naps, yet he ranted about safety codes. Responding crew arrived giggling, one joking about cabin escape rooms, turning the mix-up into a doorknob drama of directional despair. 52. A culturally insensitive middle-aged woman repeatedly summoned her cabin steward during the voyage, rudely addressing him as Mr. Chocolate Man, based on his skin tone, prompting the embarrassed steward to report the harassment to his supervisor while maintaining professionalism. She waved him over for trivial requests, oblivious to the offense, but he smiled through gritted teeth and excused himself quickly each time. Fellow stewards overheard in the crew quarters and shook their heads in disbelief, sharing stories of passenger ignorance. The woman's travel companion husband cringed every time, whispering apologies to the steward as the awkward encounters spread whispers among staff, in escalating the tasteless teasing into a chocolate-coated controversy of crew courtesy. 53. An ultra-demanding Karen type strutted to the purser's office on embarkation day, listing her extravagant requirements like Italian linen sheets for her bed, baccarat crystal goblets for drinks, and permission to bring her personal staff on board to cater to her every whim. She flipped through a notebook of preferences, insisting standard amenities were beneath her status. The officer explained luxury limits politely, but she huffed about paying top dollar and threatened to disembark immediately. Her assistant, trailing behind, nodded vigorously at first, then smirked at the absurdity when denied. Queue observers exchanged wide-eyed glances, one murmuring about yacht mix-ups, transforming the high-maintenance manifesto into a lavish lunacy on board. 54. A directionally challenged young man lit up in the designated portside smoking area, only to spot land appearing on the starboard side mid-puff, convincing him the smoking policy was a total lie and prompting a march to security to complain about misleading ship orientations. He gestured wildly at the horizon, accusing deceptive mapping. The guard clarified nautical terms calmly, but he shook his head, demanding smoke. Anywhere privileges or a compass refund. His smoking buddy puffed nearby, chuckling that he'd mixed up left and right again, yet the man insisted on official apologies. Deck loungers overheard and howled, one proposing spinning the ship, turning the side-swapping smoke into a nautical nonsense narrative. 55. A soda-loving teen guzzled cans throughout the cruise, shocked at checkout to see his sign and sale bill ballooned from unknowingly charging non-free sodas, leading him to argue with the accountant that all soft drinks should be complimentary like water and demanding the charges wiped clean. He scrolled through the itemized list accusingly, blaming unclear menus. The clerk pointed to beverage package options, but he crossed arms, insisting on kid-friendly policies. His dad reviewed the bill beside him, face-palming at the tally while teasing about hydration habits, yet the teen rallied for fairness. Disembarking families chuckled, one suggesting unlimited fizz fountains, elevating the bubbly bill into a carbonated cash crisis. 56. A hungry old woman wandered into the piano bar late at night, menu in hand, insisting they serve warm cinnamon rolls because the name sounded exactly like Cinnamon Bar, and refusing to accept it was a music venue, not a bakery. She tapped the counter expectantly, describing her craving vividly. The bartender smiled while offering cocktails instead, but she waved them off, demanding fresh-baked goods or a name change. Her companion aunt giggled from a stool, admitting the mix-up was hilarious. Yet the woman lectured about truthful advertising. Patrons at the keys paused their songs to laugh, one improvising a cinnamon tune, transforming the melodic misunderstanding into a pastry piano parody. 57. A frugal businessman from abroad dined extravagantly each night, then balked at the suggested gratuities on his final bill. Confronting the dining manager about why he had to tip at all when such customs weren't standard in his home country, and demanding the fees removed entirely. He folded his arms, recounting cultural differences emphatically. The manager explained service appreciation norms, but he dismissed them as American greed. His table-mate wife nodded uncomfortably, whispering that the waiters deserved it, yet he persisted with international etiquette debates. Nearby diners overheard and smirked, one quipping about tip-free zones, turning the gratuity gripe into a cross-cultural cash conundrum. 58. An English-only speaking mom ventured ashore in a foreign port, frustrated when locals didn't respond to her questions in her language, leading her to return fuming to the excursion desk, complaining about the lack of universal English and demanding translators or English mandatory ports next time. She gestured animatedly about communication barriers ruining her shopping. The coordinator suggested phrasebooks, but she rejected them, insisting on cruise accountability. Her daughter translated quietly beside her, rolling eyes at the entitlement, while the mom raved on about global standards. Returning groups laughed sympathetically, one proposing Babel fish gadgets, escalating the language lapse into a bilingual babel of port problems. 59. A balance-challenged young woman staggered down the corridors during mild swells, complaining to any crew she bumped into that the ship's constant motion was annoyingly making walking impossible and someone needed to make it stop immediately like flipping a switch. She clutched walls dramatically, accusing unnecessary rocking. The steward offered ginger remedies, but she demanded captain intervention for stability. Her boyfriend steadied her arm, teasing about sea legs, yet she insisted on smooth sailing guarantees. Passing passengers chuckled while swaying, one suggesting anti-gravity boots, transforming the motion malaise into a wobbly walking woe of nautical nuisances. 60. A size-sensitive old man toured the compact ship on day one, grumbling to guest services that it felt way too small and cramped, despite knowing the exact tonnage and dimensions when booking, demanding a larger vessel transfer or space-expanding refunds. He compared it to brochures accusingly, blaming misleading photos. The agent reminded him of his choice, but he waved off the logic, insisting on comfort clauses. His wife squeezed past crowds, agreeing mildly, then laughed at his pre-cruise research fail, while he detailed expansion ideas. Tour groups snickered, one proposing pocket-sized ships, turning the diminutive dissatisfaction into a tonnage tantrum of booking blunders. 61. A perfectionist aunt stared out her cabin porthole at the splattered view, then summoned housekeeping to complain that seawater spray was dirtying the window and needed cleaning immediately, or she'd demand a full refund for the ocean view upgrade she paid extra for. She pointed at droplets accusingly, claiming obstructed serenity. The cleaner arrived with supplies, but she supervised closely, insisting on streak-free shine. Her travel niece peered over, giggling that waves were natural, yet the aunt lectured about maintenance standards. Cabin mates in adjacent rooms overheard and chortled, one suggesting wiper blades, amplifying the salty smudge into a window-washing whirlwind of watery woes. There you have it, folks. 61 epic tales of cruise chaos proving that some Americans turn entitlement into an Olympic sport. From demanding the ocean waves get turned off to babysitting requests for stewards, we've lost the plot in the best way. If these had you howling, smash that like button, subscribe to Ridiculous Complaints for more absurdity, hit the bell for notifications, and share this with your craziest friend. What's your wildest vacation complaint or Karen sighting? So drop it in the comments below. Let's keep the laughs rolling.